Thing forever.
Right. Quick question,
Mm-hmm.
Nicole. Would it be possible to see your stand store?
Yeah, I can pull it up. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun.
Pull it up, and then we can share your screen, right?
Oh, she can share it.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Because
I
I'm
can
highly
share it on here.
interested
Cool.
in seeing what you were explaining
Uh,
earlier. You know what?
I will show you. It's opening up. There we go. All right, so let's see how I can
All
share my
right. Hold on.
screen.
Hold on. I can't.
Jeff, you're gonna fall out.
I can't see it.
You're gonna fall out.
I can't see it.
You're gonna fall out. Don't.
All right, now I have to figure out how to share my screen. How do I do it? Oh, that's easy.
All right.
There's a button.
That little icon in the middle.
Yeah, it's the icon in the middle below the.
Oh, there we go. Wow,
She
this
should
is
be
so
able to
much
do that,
easier
right?
than I
Yeah.
thought it would be. There we
Right.
go.
Hold on. Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yeah, hold on. There we go. Look
Yeah.
at that, huh?
Boom to the boom.
There's my fake lashes. So yeah, it's lovely. So what's cool is you can have all of your socials linked up here at the top, your name, a little like
Okay.
bio of who you are.
So
and then,
it's a vertical looking
yeah,
setup.
it is. And then it's got like my digital marketing bundle because I sell MRR course, but I bundled it with a done for you custom funnel, email swipes, IG posts, media planner, and free Facebook group that's private. So it's got a lot more value. And then
Right.
the funnel design services are separate. If someone just wants that, they can purchase that through me. One-on-one coaching, which I do quite often. Email templates if they just want that. Instagram templates if they just want that. I have a freebie, of course. It's my social media content planner, so people can grab that, or they can go to my Amazon influencer store if they want to see what kind of tools I use for my influencing and for,
That's incredible.
Yeah.
This is like upper level beyond Linktree, beyond.
Oh yeah, it's so nice
so far.
And then this is my masterclass that'll be coming up in about a month. It'll be my first offer. It'll be a live masterclass. So this is just the email wait list for people that want to get in as an early bird. And if they do, they get 200.
All right, you heard that, people.
Yeah. Early bird gets the worm.
Yeah, get the worm.
And then
be that early
the
bird.
stand
Get the
link
worm.
is down here too. So if anybody ever wants to use my stand link, I get commission for that too, which is super nice. But yeah, it's great. I really enjoy it. And then like if you're clicking on something, it just opens up your website basically. So, the little grab page.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
totally dope.
if you purchase something, it opens up into Stand Store's kind of version. It lets you build out this little description of what everything is that you're going to give them. And then they can fill out their name and they can fill out their payment and purchase it right here. And then you get notified as someone who's selling these products that you've made a sale. The coach is cool because when they click book a call, it actually lets them pick the day and time and fill out their information. And also I'm able to ask them questions like, what's your handle on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, any other ones, and what are your main goals for the call? So you can customize all of that and then they can pay. And then same thing like that. If it's a product like the email templates or the Instagram templates, you can actually just download after you pay. So after you purchase something, then it comes straight to your inbox. So it's a really nice advanced system. The Amazon influencer goes straight to my Amazon influencer page, which is awesome. So you can see like all of my socials are linked, and then you can see like all of my promo videos for different
Okay,
products.
so what you're saying is I'm sorry, Nicole, if
It's
I may
really
interject.
cool. Like I
that link on the stand